Hello, my name is Jeff Jamiolo, and today I'm going to talk about forgiveness. I'm talking about this today because actually I kind of stumbled upon something that's related to that, so we're going to kind of look into forgiveness. But to forgive someone is to abolish them of your sins internally for yourself. It's not really, you don't forgive people for them. You forgive them for yourself. That's all you can do. And usually when you forgive yourself, that alleviates you from having to worry about it. But forgiveness is an interesting thing because actually I stumbled across something in Exodus 20, which is basically the Ten Commandments. And it was, do not covet your neighbor's wife, oxen, and all kinds of other things. But do not covet your neighbor's stuff. And that got me to thinking a little bit, because you really shouldn't have other people's stuff anyway, kind of like theft-wise. But there's different kind of theft. I should not take other people's burdens either. Just like you forgive for yourself, you should not be taking other people's problems. And I think I have to start forgiving people for that, because over my life, I've actually had a lot of people dump problems on me. And I worry about them more than the person who actually had the problems worries about them. And I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty sure that's not right. But they did. But then again, there's an old adage that you only get what you can handle. I go, but the fact remains is it really wasn't my problem. Especially when the person didn't really want to fix the problem. That's kind of the issue too. Some people actually will go over and transfer a problem to you, by talking to you. And now it somehow becomes your problem. And they get to walk away, scot-free, do their thing. As crazy as that sounds, actually that happens a lot in business. And now it somehow becomes your problem. When originally it was not, because I didn't create the situation to start with. I never would have made those decisions. But it's about forgiveness. And sometimes you have to forgive a whole group of people. Some people have to forgive an entire organization. But just because you forgive them doesn't really mean you have to continue to deal with them. Looking in the Bible, the Lord has kind of an interesting take on this. If you look at Job, it says, who am I that I should try to answer God or even reason with him? Even if I were right, I would have no defense and could only plead for mercy. So really, hence the reason why we forgive for ourselves, because we can't really take that before God. We can't ask God to forgive, because God already forgave all of us. However, the Lord is a good Father, and he will punish you when needed. Now, what's interesting about forgiveness is the reason you forgive is actually in Hebrews 12:15. It's don't let bitterness take root. Look after each other, that none of you shall fall, none of you fails and to receive grace of God. Watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. The problem is when you start thinking that way, you kind of start thinking like them. And that's not always a good thing. It's actually usually a terrible thing. Because if actually someone wronged you, you don't want to wrong them the same way. It's not the eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth deal. Back in the Old Testament, that's what it was, man. They told you outright, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. New Testament, the scheme changed. The scheme was now, hey, we're going to go over and forgive. Don't ask me what the change was for. I wasn't there back then. But it's interesting that they say that, because it is bitter. It makes you a bitter person, a terribly bitter person. at the very least, it breeds jealousy. If I can quote you another one, Acts 8:22 and 23. It said, it's from actually Peter to Simon, and it is, repent to our wickedness and pray to the Lord. Perhaps he will forgive your evil thoughts. For I can see that you are full of bitter jealousy and held captive by sin. If you don't forgive, you are actually in sin. That's a good one. I like that one. What's ironic about forgiveness is you can actually choose not to forgive them. But that would therefore mean you are actually in sin for not forgiving them. It means actually your soul is not going to go any farther from where it is because it's not learning the lessons. Now, on a side note on that is also that if you choose to forgive, how? Because a lot of people, say they forgive and they're still triggered. If you really forgave someone, you wouldn't be triggered. And the reason I bring this up is because I had a conversation with a coworker for lunch today. And the topic triggered me because she still works at the place I used to work. So it triggered me a little bit. And it triggered me, and it kind of triggered her because we both realized we're both kind of bitter and we shouldn't be. We're back to I didn't quite forgive it enough. But it also brings me up to the topic of forgiveness and when's enough's enough. One thing that is absent from the Bible is when to just walk away. When you could forgive. So that means every day of your natural life you're going to forgive someone and they're still going to treat you like trash. I'm pretty sure there's a ruling on that one too. And the ruling is goodbye. But I think the point that was supposed to be made is no one's perfect. That's why you shouldn't do that. You should try to forgive. I try to forgive. Generally, I forgive most people. I just kind of goes in one ear, goes out the other. It's like, whatever. Move on next. And then what'll happen is they'll continue to do the same thing over and over again because they thought they kind of got away with it. Okay? And I mention it to them, and then at that point, they think it's cute, and they continue to do it. It's like, well, internally, I look at it as you're not worth my time. Kind of like in the Bible when Jesus was saying to the disciples, go door to door. Someone slams the door or screams at you, just go to the next one, move on. It's not worth your time to deal with them. It's not your problem. We're back to not your neighbor's problem. And I'm taking neighbor pretty loosely here to be anyone other than you. Granted, it could be, a family member too. It's just interesting that the Bible really doesn't say when you should cut it loose and say, we're done. But usually you have to. There are certain people they're so toxic you have to. Don't get me wrong. When you declare them toxic, you're judging them. Usually the rule of thumb I look at it as is you appear to be going through some sort of karma, and I'm going to ignore you or not be near you until it goes away. And if that never goes away and it continues to get hit with karma, well, I don't want to be hanging around with people that are like this. Even the Bible, it does say that you're not supposed to hang around with those kind of people that cause trouble. So, why would you hang around people who are infected with demons and continue to keep doing that? And some people do. They refuse to change, and they continue to do what they do. So, I know for me, I've learned to, 3 strikes, you're out kind of deal. Even though 3 strikes could be 5, could be 8, could be 10. But it's generally not less than 3. Usually I kind of just ignore them and ignore the comment or whatever. And I said, then you address it later when something else happens, and it's like, oh no. And then you just learn you may have to just burn a bridge. And as much as people don't like that, I go, but we're back to, is it good for the kingdom? Is it good for the kingdom for me to continue to be drained of this person doing things to me? It's kind of like your boss. You go to work. You go to work and your boss basically screams at you every day. Okay? You tell him about it. Heck, you file paperwork with the government. Doesn't matter. Nothing happens. The question at hand is, do you keep forgiving him or do you move on? The question is, are you doing anything wrong? Well, no, you're not. You're just doing your job and you're pointing out what it is. So at that point, what are your choices? Sit there and take it or walk away. Put out your resume, look for another place, boom, out. Think about it. Back to don't stay where you're not wanted. Golden rules, which people have a tendency to forget. Anyway, I just want to talk about forgiveness. It's a biblical thing. I go, however, even before I was overly religious, I actually did go over and I do forgive people. Except you give it a different name. I just kind of just ignore them and go back into my little world. Which is not so terrible. As I said, it's just I'm trying to think. Pretty sure the spiritual side doesn't actually have a lot of forgiveness there. Because you also have to remember that from the spiritual side, you learn that you have to be around people to grow. And you have to be around some kinds of people to grow. Because if you don't grow, they won't grow. But then you go and you look at it and say, well, do we keep doing this? Round and round the merry-go-round, around and around the squirrel cage. What do we do? It's really the question. But as I said, I've generally went with the 3 strikes you're out kind of deal. At that point, it's like, well, it was a nice job out last. Next. If it's a friend, I'll wait for them to change and come to me. If they don't come, I'm in a different place. Because you have to remember, chances are good you're in a higher frequency than they are anyway. You're on a different, your timeline is out there. They're down here. So they're still waddling in whatever nastiness they want to do. You'd be surprised. But welcome to forgiveness. It's kind of one of those little gray areas that they don't tell you how often to do it or when to do it and why. But you do it because to forgive yourself. A lot of times I will beat myself up over relationships. Like, oh, why did I get into that relationship? Forgive yourself. Move on. Clearly there was something I had to learn there. And that becomes a different dissection of what was I supposed to be learning? So, not a terrible thing. Dig. The more you dig in here, find out the truth, the better off you are. Because the more answers you find, you'll understand you. When you understand you kind of understand your higher self and you kind of understand everything else. They are kind of linked together. Now the law of one. Law of oneness. But I'd like to thank you for listening.